The obsidian walls of the High Synod of Valeri seemed to absorb the ambient light of the triple suns that burned beyond the crystalline dome, casting long, oppressive shadows over the assembly. It was a chamber built to intimidate, designed by architects dead for 10,000 cycles to remind any who entered that the Valeri triumvirate was eternal, immovable, and absolute. The air was cold, recycled through filtration systems that scented the atmosphere with ozone and crushed petals of the night-blooming xeris, a smell that to High Exarch Calith had always reeked of stale death and stagnation. He stood at the edge of the central dais, his multifaceted eyes narrowing as he observed the projection hovering in the center of the room. It was a crude, rotating wireframe of a vessel, blocky and unrefined, lacking the elegant curves and gravity-manipulating sails of Valeri engineering. It looked like a brick thrown in defiance of physics, a testament to stubbornness rather than grace. "It is an insult to the aesthetic of the void," Lord Vorian rumbled, his voice a deep tectonic grind that vibrated through the floor plates. Vorian, the supreme warlord of the First and Second Armada, wore armor forged from the carapace of void whales, gilded with circuitry that hummed with a violet lethality. He gestured a heavy, four-fingered hand toward the hologram. "Look at it. Chemical propulsion, kinetic projectile launchers. Shielding that relies on polarized alloys rather than energy displacement fields. They are children playing with fire in a straw house. To suggest they pose a threat to the triumvirate is not just treason, Calith. It is an absurdity." Calith did not flinch. As the High Exarch of diplomacy and outer rim intelligence, he was used to Vorian's bluster. The military caste always confused size with power and elegance with capability. Calith adjusted his ceremonial robes, the fabric shimmering like liquid mercury, and tapped the console before him. The hologram shifted, zooming in on the hull of the human ship. "It is primitive, yes," Calith said, his voice smooth, a sibilant hiss that carried effortlessly across the vast acoustic chamber. "But it is also redundant. Observe the layering. They do not rely on a single drive core. They have 3 backup generators. Their hull is not just alloy, it is honeycombed with ablative armor designed to break apart to save the structure beneath. They expect to be hit. They plan for pain. That is not the design of a species that expects to rule. It is the design of a species that refuses to die." Vorian let out a barking laugh, a sound that was echoed by the sycophants in the lower tiers of the amphitheater. "Cowardice masked as engineering. They build to survive because they know they cannot conquer. We have observed their transmissions. They are fractured, arguing amongst themselves, divided into nation-states on their muddy rock. They possess no unity of purpose, no grand psionic chorus like the Valeri. They are biological noise, and you would have us delay the expansion of the mining guilds for this. For a species that has barely crawled out of its gravity well. I would have us study them," Calith insisted, his mandibles clicking together in frustration. "Their expansion into the Veil sector was not accidental. That region of space is riddled with gravitational anomalies and radiation storms that shred our sensors, yet the humans navigate it. They live there. They have established colonies on worlds where the atmospheric pressure would crush a Valeri warrior in his armor. They call it terraforming, but it looks more like suffering. They embrace the hostile. That suggests a psychology we do not understand. If we attack them, we provoke an unknown variable." The third member of the triumvirate, the matriarch Lyra, shifted on her floating throne. She was the voice of the psionic clergy, her mind constantly brushing against the thoughts of those in the room. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, revealing the pulsing blue veins of pure lyrium beneath. "I feel no great mind from them," she whispered, her voice projecting directly into their skulls. "I reached out across the void. I sought their song. There is nothing, only a static, a gray, dull static. They are spiritually empty. To extinguish them would be to silence a discordant note in the galaxy's symphony. They are barely sentient in the eyes of the great flow. Dismissed as primitive, Calith, you see depth where there is only mud." Calith felt the weight of their judgment. It was the curse of his position to see the cracks in the Empire while the others admired the reflection in the mirror. "The static you hear, matriarch," Calith said carefully, "might not be emptiness, it might be a wall. I have reviewed the logs of the probe we lost near their outpost station Onyx." Before the feed cut, the probe detected energy spikes that did not match any known spectrum. Not fusion, not antimatter, something colder. Vorian slammed his fist onto the dais, shattering the holographic projection into a shower of light motes. "Enough! We have debated this for 3 cycles. The mining guilds demand access to the mineral-rich belts of the Veil sector. The humans occupy it. They have refused our generous offer of servitude. They have ignored our demarcation buoys. They are vermin infesting a treasure chest. I am deploying the twin fleets. The Gilded Claw will take their forward operating base, and the sun's wrath will burn their homeworld's atmosphere to ash. It will be a mercy. We will end their struggle for survival by ending them. Two fleets? Calith asked, a cold knot forming in his stomach. Vorian, that is excessive force for a primitive species. That is an extermination force. That is the point, Vorian sneered, turning his back on the diplomat. We do not fight wars with insects, Calith. We step on them. The galaxy must be reminded that the Valeri do not negotiate with the unwashed. We execute. The fleets launch within the hour. Prepare your eulogies for the humans if you must. But do not waste my time with their ghost stories. The chamber descended into the chaotic murmur of approval as the clerks and minor lords began plotting the spoils of the coming war. Calith stood alone at his console, watching the tactical data stream begin to populate with the mobilization orders. He saw the sheer magnitude of the force Vorian was unleashing. Thousands of sleek golden warships, powered by singularities, armed with lance batteries that could crack moons. Against them stood the Terran coalition, a scattering of blocky frigates, industrial platforms, and ships that looked like they were welded together from scrap. It should have been a slaughter. It should have been a footnote in history. But Calith looked at the static on his screen, the gray noise that the matriarch had dismissed as emptiness. He stared into it, and for a fleeting second he thought he saw something move behind the static. Not a shape, but a lack of one. A shadow deeper than the dark. He deactivated his console, a profound sense of dread settling over him. He hoped he was wrong. He prayed to the great flow that the humans really were just primitive mud dwellers. Because if they weren't, then the Valeri were about to kick a door that should have remained shut. The Vale sector was a graveyard of stars. Here, the nebulae were not vibrant nurseries of creation, but thick, choking clouds of ionized dust that scrambled long-range sensors and ate away at shielding. It was a region the Valeri had avoided for millennia, deeming it cursed and resource-poor. But the humans had settled here. They had built their homes in the dark. Admiral Vorian stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominance, a cathedral of gold and white ceramic. The bridge was vast, a tiered amphitheater where hundreds of officers worked in silent synchronization, their minds linked to the ship's central cortex. Outside the massive viewport, the Gilded Claw fleet moved in perfect formation, a river of light cutting through the gloom of the nebula. Flanking them, partially obscured by the cosmic dust, was the second fleet, the Sun's Wrath. The combined firepower was enough to subjugate a sector. "Time to target intercept," Vorian demanded, his voice booming over the command link. "We are entering the gravity well of the human colony Onyx II, now Supreme Warlord," the sensor officer reported, his voice tinged with the arrogance of one who knows he is untouchable. "Detecting orbital defense platforms, primitive kinetic drivers and missile batteries. No energy shields detected on the planet or the stations. They are naked." Vorian sneered. "Pathetic. Open a wideband channel. Let them hear the voice of their new gods before they burn." The screen flickered, and the image of the human command center appeared. It was a stark contrast to the Valeri bridge. The human room was dimly lit, cramped, filled with the analog hum of cooling fans and the clatter of physical keyboards. The humans themselves looked tired. They wore gray uniforms with no ornamentation, their faces pale under the harsh artificial lighting. In the center of the screen stood a human male, older, with hair the color of steel and eyes that seemed to lack pupils, though Vorian knew it was just the poor resolution of their technology. "This is Admiral Vance of the Terran Coalition," the human said. His voice was not loud. It was flat, calm, almost bored. "You have entered sovereign Terran space with armed vessels. You are in violation of the non-aggression pact we proposed 3 standard months ago. Turn your ships around, leave the sector. This is your only warning." Vorian laughed. It was a genuine, belly-shaking laugh that spread through the bridge crew. "Warning? You speak of warnings to the Valeri? Look out your window, little creature. Look at the sky. We are the storm. We are the judgment. Surrender your vessel and your world, and perhaps we will allow a fraction of your population to live as labor stock. Refuse, and we will turn your history into ash." Vance didn't blink. He didn't look at his tactical officers. He didn't sweat. He simply looked into the camera, his expression unreadable. "We are not interested in being labor stock, and we are not interested in war, but we are very, very good at ending them. I repeat, withdraw. The physics of this sector are unstable. We cannot guarantee your safety if you persist." "Our safety?" Vorian roared, the amusement vanishing, replaced by warrior's fury. You threaten us. All ships lock targets. Target their command spire and the orbital grid. Fire at will. Burn them from the sky. The transmission cut. Vorian watched the tactical display. He expected the humans to scramble, to launch their pathetic missiles, to scream for mercy. Instead, the human ships did nothing. They powered down. Supreme Warlord, the tactical officer called out, confusion rippling through his psionic projection. Enemy vessels are venting coolant. They are shutting down their reactors. They are going dead in the water. A suicide pact, Vorian mused. They accept their fate. Good fire. The lances of the Valeri fleet glowed with the brightness of newborn stars. Beams of coherent light, capable of piercing planetary crusts, streaked across the void toward the silent human fleet and the colony below. But the beams never hit. Somewhere in the space between the Valeri fleet and the human line, the light simply stopped. It didn't explode. It didn't refract off a shield. It ceased to exist. The beams entered a region of space about 10,000 kilometers in front of the human fleet and vanished, swallowed by an invisible maw. Report, Vorian bellowed. Did we miss malfunction? Sensors are reading. Nothing, Warlord. I mean literally nothing. No data, no background radiation, no starlight. There is a blind spot manifesting in front of the fleet. The view screen showed it. A patch of darkness deeper than the black of space was expanding. It wasn't just a lack of light, it was a lack of reality. The stars behind it were gone. The nebula was gone. It was a hole in the universe, a tear in the fabric of the great flow, and it was growing. It's expanding, the navigator screamed, his psionic discipline shattering. The event horizon is moving toward us at sublight speeds. It's eating the sensor probes. Reverse thrust, Vorian ordered, a flicker of genuine fear piercing his heart. All ships full reverse. What is that weapon? On the human bridge, which they could no longer see but could imagine, Admiral Vance pressed a single analog button on his console. He wasn't smiling. He looked sad. Protocol entropy, he whispered to the silent room. Release the dampeners. The darkness didn't shoot. It didn't burn. It screamed. It wasn't a sound carried by air. It was a sound carried by the sudden, violent unraveling of physics. The Valeri crews, psionically sensitive, felt it first. It was the sound of mathematics failing. It was the sound of the universe realizing it shouldn't exist. The leading edge of the darkness touched the escort frigate light of dawn. There was no explosion. The ship simply dissolved. It didn't break into pieces. It turned into dust, then into atoms, then into nothingness. The gold armor, the crew, the energy cores, they were unmade. The darkness was not a weapon of energy. It was a weapon of entropy. The humans had found a way to weaponize the heat death of the universe. Shields are ineffective, the tactical officer shrieked, clawing at his face as the psychic backlash hit him. It ignores shields, it ignores armor, it is decaying us. The molecular bonds of the hull are unraveling. Vorian watched in horror as the gilded claw fleet began to scream. Ships on the perimeter were consumed by the shadow. The darkness was like a living tide, a swarm of microscopic void events that tore matter apart at the quantum level. Signal the sun's wrath, Vorian yelled. Tell them to flank, tell them to strike the source. We cannot reach them, Warlord, the comms officer wept. They are screaming too, look. Vorian looked to the tactical plot. The second fleet, positioned in the nebula, was gone. In its place was another sphere of absolute nothingness. The humans hadn't just blocked the attack, they had deployed these anomalies behind the Valeri lines. They were surrounded by non-existence. Hail them, Vorian roared, his pride forgotten, replaced by the primal terror of a creature facing a predator it could not comprehend. Hail the humans, we surrender, cease fire. The screen flickered to life. Admiral Vance was there. He looked exactly the same, calm, tired. Surrender is not compatible with the event currently in progress, Vance said, his voice devoid of malice, which made it infinitely worse. We warned you. The physics of this sector are unstable. We spend every day keeping the fabric of reality stitched together here. You fired high-energy lances into a region of space held together by our containment fields. You broke the seal. We didn't fire a weapon, Warlord. We just stopped holding back the dark. Stop it, Vorian begged. Close it. We can't, Vance said. Not until it has fed. You brought 2 suns' worth of energy into a vacuum. Entropy demands a balance. It will take your fleets. It will take the energy you brought, and then, if we are lucky, we can stitch the wound shut again. You are monsters, Vorian whispered, watching the darkness swallow the prow of his flagship. The golden metal turned to gray ash and drifted away into the void. "No," Vance said softly. "We are the janitors, and you just walked on the wet floor." The transmission didn't cut out. The eternal dominance didn't explode. The darkness simply washed over the bridge. Vorian saw his own hand turn to dust, saw the fear in his officer's eyes dissolve into gray static. There was a moment of infinite cold, a realization of how small the Valeri really were, and then silence. The High Synod was silent, not the respectful silence of attention, but the terrified silence of a graveyard. The live feed from the twin fleets had cut out 3 hours ago. The last telemetry had shown the impossible, mass simultaneous deletion of 20,000 distinct transponders. No wreckage drifting, no distress pods, just a sudden, absolute absence of data. High Exarch Calith stood before the dais again. Matriarch Lyra was catatonic, her mind shattered by the psychic death scream of millions of Valeri sailors dying in an instant. The lower courts were in panic. The invincible armadas were gone. What was that?" a junior minister whispered, his voice trembling. That, Calith said, his voice ringing with a grim finality, was the human answer. "We must mobilize the reserves," a general shouted, though he looked like he wanted to vomit. "We must glass their system from long range. We cannot let this stand." "You will do no such thing," Calith snapped, turning to face the assembly with a newfound authority born of survival instinct. "Did you not see? They did not use a fleet. They used a force of nature. If we attack again, they might not just erase a fleet. They might erase here." A siren wailed throughout the spire. "Proximity alert, unidentified vessel entering high orbit. It bypassed the planetary defense grid. It just appeared." The main view screen activated. Hovering above the golden city of the Valeri capital was a single ship. It was small, gray, and scarred. It was the Pale Horse, a Terran diplomatic cruiser. It hung there, a knife blade against the throat of the Empire. "They are hailing us," the comms officer whispered. "Put it through," Calith ordered. The face of Admiral Vance appeared. He looked even more tired than before. There were dark circles under his eyes. "High Exarch," Vance said, nodding slightly. "I believe we have some things to discuss regarding the definitions of primitive and territory." Calith stepped forward. "Admiral, you have destroyed 2 of our greatest fleets. You hang over our world. Have you come to finish the job, to unleash that darkness upon our home?" Vance shook his head, and for the first time he looked sympathetic. "No, we aren't conquerors, Exarch. We don't want your world. We don't want your empire. We just want you to listen." "We are listening," Calith said, humbling himself before the hologram. "Good," Vance said. "You called us primitive because we use projectile weapons and chemical rockets. You wondered why we don't use singularity drives or high-energy lances." He paused, looking down at something off-screen. "It's not because we don't know how. It's because we know what happens when you use them too much. We know what listens to the noise." The atmosphere in the chamber shifted from fear to confusion. "The darkness you saw," Vance continued, "is what we call the quiet. It's the natural state of the universe when the energy runs out. It's entropy. But out there in the Veil sector and beyond the galactic rim, it's not just a physical state. It's inhabited." Matriarch Lyra stirred on her throne, her eyes fluttering open. "The static," she whispered. "The gray static. It wasn't empty, it was full." "Yes," Vance said. "We humans, we evolved on a world of constant struggle. We learned that fire burns, so we mastered fire. We learned that the atom splits, so we mastered the atom. But when we reached the stars, we found that the stars are dying. There is something eating the light of the universe from the outside in. The Veil sector is the front line. That's why we live there. That's why our ships are armored against nothingness. We are the dam." Vance leaned closer to the camera. "You Valeri, you live in the core worlds. It's bright there, safe. You play your games of empire and conquest because you've never looked into the dark and seen it looking back. We didn't invent the weapon that killed your fleets. We just opened a window to let the outside air in. Your ships were bright, loud, and full of tasty energy. The quiet ate them." Calith felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "You are saying that we are not the only ones in the galaxy." "I'm saying you're the children playing in the sandbox," Vance said grimly. "And we are the ones guarding the fence. We didn't want to fight you. We need you. We need your resources, not to conquer you, but because the dam is cracking. The signal we sent you, the one you ignored, wasn't a threat. It was a request for logistics." Vance's image was replaced by a star map. It showed the galaxy, a swirling spiral of light. But at the edges, the stars were winking out. Entire clusters were going dark, not over millions of years, but over days. A red line marked the human territory in the Vale sector. It was a thin, fragile shield against an encroaching ocean of black. "We held the line today," Vance's voice returned. "But using the quiet as a weapon weakens the barrier. We sacrificed 100 years of stability to stop your fleets. We can't do it again. The entity that lives in the entropy, it noticed us today. It tasted your ships. And now it's hungry." The High Synod was paralyzed. The petty politics, the mining rights, the arrogance of the ancient bloodlines, it all dissolved in the face of the existential horror displayed on the screen. The Valeri had thought themselves the masters of the universe, only to realize they were huddling around a dying campfire while wolves circled in the dark. Calith looked at the map. He looked at the human ship, so small and fragile against the void, yet carrying the weight of a galaxy's survival. He understood now. The utilitarian design, the redundant systems, the lack of aesthetics. They were war machines, yes, but not for war against other life. They were survival suits for a species diving into hell. "What do you need?" Calith asked. It was the only question that mattered. "Industrial capacity," Vance answered immediately. "We have the tech, we have the know-how, and we have the will, but we don't have the scale. We need your fabrication nanites. We need your raw ore. We need your fleets, not to fight us, but to patrol the breach while we fix the wall." "And if we refuse?" a warlord asked weakly. "Then we will withdraw," Vance said simply. "We will pull back to Earth, fortify our own system, and let the quiet in. It will eat the Vale sector first, then the outer rim, then you. We might survive another 1,000 years in our bunkers. You won't last a decade." The silence stretched. It was a choice between submission and extinction. But as Calith looked at the human, he realized it wasn't submission. It was elevation. The humans were offering them a place on the wall. "We dismissed you as primitive," Calith said, his voice echoing with a strange new respect. "We thought you were mud dwellers." "We are," Vance said, a faint, dry smile touching his lips. "But mud makes for good bricks, and we're building a fortress." Calith turned to the assembly. He saw the fear, but he also saw the dawning realization. The Valeri were proud, but they were not suicidal. "Exarch Calith," Matriarch Lyra spoke, her voice weak but clear. "The static, I hear it now, it is a scream, a hunger. The humans, their minds are not empty. They are silent because they are focusing. They are holding the mental line as well as the physical one." She looked at the screen. "We will help." Calith turned back to the screen. "Admiral Vance, the Valeri Triumvirate accepts your proposal. The first industrial fleet will be mobilized to the Vale sector within the cycle. We will provide the materials." "Good," Vance said. He didn't celebrate, he didn't gloat. He just looked relieved. "Get them there fast, Exarch. The sensors on the Pale Horse are picking up a resonance frequency from the Andromeda galaxy." "Another fleet?" Calith asked. "No," Vance said, and the screen darkened as he prepared to cut the feed. "A heartbeat, it's waking up." The connection severed. The view screen returned to the image of the Pale Horse turning and accelerating away, back toward the darkness, back toward the impossible war that humanity had been fighting in secret since the day they first left their gravity well. Calith stood in the High Synod, the golden light of the room feeling suddenly fragile. He looked at his hands, at the gold and jewels of his office. They felt heavy, useless. "Clear the agenda," Calith ordered, his voice booming with a new purpose. "Cancel the mining disputes. Recall the pleasure yachts. Reconfigure the shipyards for heavy alloy plating and ablative armor." "But Exarch," an aide stammered, "that will ruin the economy. It will destroy our aesthetic." Calith looked out the window at the triple suns, imagining them winking out one by one, swallowed by the silence that the humans held back. "There is no aesthetic in the dark," Calith said. "We are no longer the masters of this galaxy. We are the supply line, and the humans—" He paused, remembering the terrifying nothingness that had swallowed the pride of his people. "The humans are the soldiers we never knew we needed. Pray they are enough." He turned back to the console, the political map of the Empire forgotten, replaced by the tactical readout of the Vale sector. The static was there, gray and swirling. And deep within it, Calith saw the shadow of something vast, ancient, and hungry moving against the light. "Work," Calith commanded. "Work as if the darkness is already here, because it is." The chamber erupted into activity, not of war, but of survival. And far away on the edge of the abyss, the humans reloaded their guns, looked into the void, and stood their ground. They were small. They were primitive. They were terrifying, and they were the only thing left.